Next to me here is the beautiful Phanteks evolv X2. Now, this is the most money I've ever spent on a PC case, coming in at $179, but in the end, I feel like it was worth it because this thing came out looking beautiful. So you guys, please enjoy the video of this POV mount and my voiceover. I'm going to be talking about all the components I use in this PC and other stuff to look for at certain price points when you guys are shopping to build your own PC. Now, I got this GPU during the GPU shortage too, so do mind that because it is a 7800 XT I paid quite a bit for, but all around, I'm really happy with the build, so you guys please enjoy. Here we have everything laid out on the table for the complete build, and starting out with this beautiful 9600X. Now, you guys can definitely find a 7600X for around the same price point right now as a 9600X, and a 7600 will have better single core performance, but either CPU, in my opinion, is honestly a really good choice. Now, with these RAM sticks, these are 6000 megahertz overclocked and CL30. Now, the 9600X only supports 5600 mega transfers, but I was able to get a stable overclock at 6000, so I was really stoked about that. Now, on to one of my favorite SSDs I've been buying lately, the 990 evo Plus. On Amazon, this SSD has been on sale quite a bit, and I feel like Gen 5 SSDs aren't really worth it for the performance over Gen 4, considering the price point Gen 5 SSDs are at. So Gen 4 990 evo Plus is still kind of my favorite SSD lately. And onto the power supply, I've also been buying a ton of Corsair power supplies. Now, a lot of newcomer builders, I feel like, overlook how many PCI lanes they need for their graphics card. So if any of you guys want to have 3 PCI lanes dedicated for your GPU, that is definitely a good choice when picking power supplies. Even if you're going to use only 2 now for future-proofing your system, I feel like a lot of newer GPUs have been having 3 8-pin connections lately. So I always feel like it's a good idea to look at your power supply's features and definitely be pretty picky about your power supply, because I think it definitely affects your future build, upgradability, and so many other factors within your build. But I've always had good luck with Corsair, so I've been really happy with them. Now, we hooked up our Lee & Lee streamer cables. I am using the controller with these cables, and so far in this build process right here during the build, I was pretty happy with how everything was going, considering this case is pretty thin and pretty tight in some places. It was still fairly easy to build in, so I was super happy with the build so far. Now, when it comes to motherboards and AM5 motherboards, honestly, I feel like there's a lot of series and generations of AM5 motherboards that don't really give you that many good features for how much you're going to be paying for them. So the X670E has all the features I want and need out of a Gen 5 AM5 motherboard, so I think it is plenty. And recently its price has been ranging from 119 down to 219 down to 189, so that has been amazing. Now, a lot of people also ask about these fans I'm setting up right now. As you can see on the end here, they have a little controller that can switch between intake and exhaust. These are the Interstellar iCooler V3 fans, and I absolutely love them. Now, the V2 versions are definitely quieter than these V3 versions, but the V3 I am still pretty impressed with, considering they do have a pretty good CFM of 70. And you can change from intake to exhaust, which is honestly one of the coolest features, I think, because I live in a pretty dusty town, and being able to run positive airflow in my setup during the winter is huge, because I feel like I've had multiple builds lately that I've been able to run for a long time and have collected almost no dust because of their positive airflow. Now, when I'm setting up this AIO right here, I do have the tubes in the back, and I felt like this looked way better than having the tubes out in the front where the glass shows through the back, because I feel like it was taking away from the GPU, and too much focus is on the tubes when they're in front of the PC in this PC case. So I have the tubes routed at the back of the radiator, which shouldn't affect the pump at all because I'm not bending them too far, and I believe the performance should pretty much be the same, but I decided to run the tubes in the back, and as you can see, they are a little bent, but not too much. So installing this CPU cooler was super easy and super smooth. This is probably like the 10th time I've done this, because this 360mm AIO is only $56, you guys. That's why I keep buying it. It has a pretty high rated pump, so top performing pump, and it's only $56. So in my opinion, you cannot beat that. Now we plug in our, I believe, a system fan header there, and I'm going to be hooking up more fans, routing them through the top of the case. This is the AIO fans right here that are set to exhaust. Now, whenever I can in a case that allows it, I like to run a side-mounted radiator with the tubes on bottom, and I usually like to run that radiator as intake. Now, what this helps do is essentially it favors your CPU temps over your GPU temps, because you're pulling fresh air in the case and fresh air through your radiator. And when your radiator is at the top of your case, you're taking hot air from in the case and pushing it through the radiator. So you won't really see a temperature decrease, especially in a push-pull setup when you have your radiator top mounted as a push-pull, comparatively to when you have a side mount push-pull setup. You will see a big temperature decrease when set as intake as a side mount. So that's another really cool way I like to set up my radiators. Now back to the build, we have a little GPU holder, which is really cool, but this was getting in the way of my JUSB 4 header, so I had to take off the little bracket so then I could put in the little JUSB 4 connection. And that was kind of the only clearance issues I had throughout this whole build. Everything else went super smooth. Now, talking more about this case and its price point, yeah, I think it's a really cool looking case, but $179 is way too much for me for a PC case. I like to spend usually around $70 to $120 when I buy a PC case, so this was pretty spendy, and I feel like the features that it came with were pretty high quality, but they weren't really cool and unique. And so I feel like the total price of this case, it is worth $179, I'd say, but not for me. And I think buying cases around $120, I'm still super happy with all the features they have, especially being able to find a Lee & Lee 011 Vision for like $119 is probably one of my best and favorite cases for a cheaper price point. But a really cool feature about this build was the bottom tray right here kind of hooks out, and you can connect your fans to it, and then you can hook it back in. It hooks onto a little screw at the bottom of the case there. So this was a cool feature, but again, the airflow is not that great, and you are pulling up hot air from your PSU, so you're not getting that much fresh air from outside the PC case. And all around the airflow, I was just not really impressed with in this case, but it does look really cool, especially with these Interstellar iCooler V3 fans. I haven't really seen anyone else run these fans in this PC case, and it looks very awesome because usually the side infinity mirror gets blocked on this PC case, but since these fans have a front infinity mirror, you can still see it really well, and I feel like that's what really made this build pop, were definitely these fans. Now, another pro tip for you guys when building in this case is keep your cable management super clean throughout the whole process, because there's practically no room in the back of the case, and you have to clip on the back panel pretty dang tight, so you can't have any bulging wires or anything like that, as you guys will see here soon when I flip around to the back of the case. Yeah, it's just, it gets so dang tight back there. It is insane. So when you're hooking up all your fans and setting all this stuff up, make sure you keep your cable management super clean. Now with this fan, this cool feature, the cable-less technology with the little switch on the end of these controllers to change from intake to exhaust is just so cool in my opinion. The fact you can get technology like this for $36 for a 3-pack is insane comparatively to the Lee fans that are more cable-less fans, but they cost around $90. So being able to get that feature for something, for a fan that's a third of the price is so cool. Now, I was a little weirded out at the back of this PC case right here for these screw holes for the 120mm fan. They were just so deep, so you guys actually probably need a long screwdriver head to be able to screw these in, because as you can see, it kind of ate up my whole screwdriver there. So that was a little weird, the placement on those screw holes, but nonetheless, it's not that big of a deal. Now, this feature was really cool, how they have all these screws for the GPU holder brackets hidden. Now, a lot of cases do this, but this design was just so sleek and so clean looking that I was pretty impressed. When you clip that panel back on, you can almost not see it at all. It is just so smooth with the rest of the case that it almost disappears when you click it back in. Now, onto this vertical GPU mount. I do like the Cooler Master V3 mount a ton, but I do buy this easy DIY fab vertical mount because it's one of the cheaper vertical mounts that you can have a little RGB bar on. And as you see here, I have to get a mini tiny screwdriver head to screw in the tiny screws on the bottom to hold the RGB in place. But other than that, building this vertical mount is super easy. It's not as versatile as the Cooler Master V3, so you might run into clearance issues sometimes with your AIO and depending on your GPU, but most of the time clearance issues should be fine. But if you are worried about that, I would definitely just change this vertical mount to the Cooler Master V3. It is also a really good option. You just don't get any RGB. Now, you can screw on the little GPU holder right here, the extension, on a back part where there are 2 screws in the back or 2 screws in the front that I chose. But if I were going to go back, I would choose the back screws to pull the GPU back a little farther so you can see the RGB, because the 7800 XT was just so big it kind of hides the RGB beneath the GPU. But that's totally fine. I feel like if maybe I set the back position, I wouldn't have as good as clearance next to my AIO tubes. So setting it up in this front position on these screw holes probably was a better decision. Now, if I were going to go back and change anything about this PC build, I would probably just change the GPU I bought. I would stick with the Yeston Sakura, but the 7800 XT during the GPU shortage, I just paid so much for, around $600. Now, you guys can actually find a 7900 XT sometimes for around $619, which is an absolute score, because the 9070 XT is still $720 and above on most listings right now. So if I were going to go back and change anything about the build, I would probably change that 7800 XT just to a different GPU. But honestly, pairing it with this 9600X is a really well balanced pair, so I feel like it was a good choice to not have a bottleneck in the system, but I just paid a bit for this GPU. Now, as you guys can see here, I am bending this vertical GPU mount just because it was kind of sagging. I'm not sure why, which screw hole, or if the bracket already came bent, but it was sagging, so I spent quite a bit of time here just trying to bend it back to make it straight. And there we go. I finally got it happy enough to where I wanted it. Now, you also do have to be careful when building with this motherboard with how many ARGB connections you're using, because this motherboard only has 2 ARGB headers. So I do have a controller in the back, and I do daisy chain quite a bit of fans together, but nothing more than what the system can handle. So I ended up getting away with everything having an ARGB connection besides the GPU. So I was super happy with that, but it was definitely a close call, because I felt like for a second I wasn't gonna be able to connect all my RGB headers and all my fans, but in the end I was able to get everything, even the Corsair LQ lights and the vertical GPU mount, to have addressable RGB. So I was super stoked about that. Now, I get a lot of people on my social media asking about these Corsair LC100 IQ lights, and I love them. I think they're not too bad of a price, around $30 to $40, and they're pretty high quality. But this pair I got, there didn't seem to be anything different in the listing when I went to purchase them, but these ones were not magnetic, and you had to tape them on your PC case, where the last ones I had were magnetic. So I was super bummed about that they weren't magnetic. It was a huge bummer, but here we're hooking up the controller. That, again, you guys got to tuck these controllers, or if you are using a controller, it's pretty hard to fit it on the back of the case, even using the mounting brackets where you can mount a hard drive. It is just so tight in the back of the case. It is pretty unreal, and I have a lot of RGB and a lot going on in this case, so it got pretty tight, but we were able to make it happen. Here on the bottom, I am just hooking up the USB for the controller and the ARGB header for the controller. Now we take our Lee and Lee extension cables. Now this is pretty crazy here. What I have going on is I actually have the overlay from the Lee and Lee streamer cable on top of my motherboard cable from the 12 pin from Corsair. So you do not have to run the extension if you just take off the top layer, so like the overlay for the RGB on top of the PSU cable. You can just take that off, so then you don't have to run the extension, because I actually have that white extension in a different PC build just for looks. So I was happy I was able to utilize the streamer cable without needing the actual extension to it, and just using the RGB overlay. Now, as you guys can see here, the cable management is getting pretty crazy back here. So I'm doing a little bit of organization, a little bit of mapping in my head. I'm going to plug in a few more of my system fan ARGB headers here, and making sure not to daisy chain too many together. Now back to this chunky GPU, get that hooked up. I do love the Yeston Sakura GPUs so much. I've never had one fail on me or have coil whine, and I've bought, I think, 4 recently. So yeah, I've been really stoked on every GPU I've bought from Yeston. Shout out to them. They are amazing, and I think they make really cool cards. I wanted to get that 9060 XT game ace they have, but it's a little too pricey for me right now. But if you guys like this GPU, let me know in the comments, because I definitely will be building with it a lot more in the future. Now we get our other streamer cables hooked up here, and at this point in the build, I was pretty happy with how everything was turning out. I felt like it's looking really unique with the Yeston GPU being vertical mounted in this case and having these unique fans. I was pretty happy with it, and I wasn't beating up myself too hard about buying a $179 PC case, when, like I said, I usually like to spend $70 to $120 is like the most I'll spend on a PC case. Flip back around to this cable management. As you can see, I tightened it up quite a bit. It wasn't looking insane, but it was looking pretty dang good, so I was happy with it. Here we have the back panel I was talking about, and you have to have pretty good cable management for this to shut nicely. I did have to give it a good amount of force, but there's a clip right there that holds it shut, and then you put your glass back panel over this. But I thought it would be a really cool idea just to run no back panel and only the glass piece to show off your cable management if you do have really good cable management. Now we're going to pop the top back on, and I'm going to go back to the voiceover I had playing during the video to show you guys the first boot up on the PC. Let's turn it on, make sure. Look at that, you guys, beautiful. Everything is beautiful. So here I'm going to show you guys some few more shots of the PC looking absolutely beautiful, and I am using Signal RGB to control the RGB in this PC build. And then I'm going to show you guys the benchmarks and the complete specs list also here in the video.
Death brings consequence once more.
Slams on cooldown.
Magic changes, people. I got him.
Nice work.
Nullifier found its target! The first team wipe has happened. That's gotta hurt.
A slip up from the jet setters there. The jet setters back and ready to avenge that team wipe. Power is power and the powerhouse is one. First cash out started.
All stations, we are green to go. Stand by for deployment. soldier. Mark a drop point for your squad and go get after him. Enemies are dropping into the area. Watch the sky. Enemy UAV is online. Enemy UAV overhead.
Chasing mag!
Hostile UAV in the area. The squad mate has entered the gulag. They'll need to survive to redeploy. The squad mate's in the gulag. They'll fight for a chance to redeploy. Your squad made it to the safe zone. Enemy soldier incoming.
Loading! Low on ammo.
Your squad mate's in the gulag. If they survive, they redeploy. Your squad mate won the fight. They're redeploying now.
Contact! Chasing mag!